What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 1025 podcast. This is episode 10. I'm Jordan along with Ashanti and Kristen. And today we're going to return back to episode 4 on the podcast when we talked about music videos. And in this episode, we're basically going to be talking about controversial music videos. Now, art can be very controversial to the general public. And these 4 music videos we're going to be talking about have a lasting impact when it came to the visual medium, as well as causing a lot of controversy throughout the years. I remember in episode 4 we talked about videos such as Jeremy by Pearl Jam and the Prodigy Smack My B Up, which was very controversial, as well as This Is America. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about 4 videos. MIA's Born Free, Justice, Stress, Sia's Elastic Heart, and George Michael's I Want Your Sex. Now, we've all seen these 4 music videos. So what were your thoughts on MIA's Born Free? This was incredibly controversial due to the portrayal of violence and genocide in the community, and we can also relate it to now with police brutality and basically police brutality and the violence against human beings. So what were you all's thoughts on MIA's Born Free?
I think she did a very good job of pointing out how the trivialities and the ways that people are prosecuted, and it especially relates to her life as an immigrant to the UK, and especially how her father was killed for something. I forgot actually what he was killed. I'm pretty sure it was over his ethnicity and 2 warring regions, but most of her music is very political and relates back to her early life, and I absolutely love that about her. And this video definitely highlighted her political views.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, and we'll get to Kristen about MIA. I mean, we've all have probably heard of the song Paper Planes back in 2008 or 7. The I Fly Like Paper Get High Like Planes. It's a really good song. But Kristen, what were your thoughts on this video?
So I actually thought that the video did an excellent job of pointing out the racial disparities in certain communities, especially how because you're oppressed, you want to oppress someone else, which is tragic, but all the people wanted to do that because they saw what happened to them.
Yeah. One of the things I dug the most about this music video was the gritty visuals that accompany it. And also, I think this video is a juxtaposition to the song, because the song is called Born Free. So MIA is basically saying that she is born free. She's born to, live this life, and she doesn't forget the system. I'm a strong and free independent person. But the video portrays basically, in my eyes, mass incarceration of the redheaded kids that are depicted in this film. And also the depictions of violence is also very like in your face. The scene where the kids are running through the field and then the landmines are exploding. Of course, that's an homage to the Hurt Locker from Karen Bigelow. And then the scene, which is pretty much like the Money Shot, where the kid literally steps on the landmine, he explodes. That's one of those scenes that I feel will have a lasting impact on you due to the very nasty and disturbing imagery that follows.
I wanted to ask you, was this video aired on MTV, or did it only premiere on like a UK music station?
That's a good question. This video
on YouTube.
Yeah, this music video premiered on YouTube, and literally the first day it was ever uploaded, it was taken down like immediately, because this will be like an example of how YouTube tries to censor, creators. Even most recently in 2020, Kanye West made this music video called Wash Us in the Blood in light of the George Floyd protest. And then that was restricted for age, and it wasn't graphic at all. But then 6ix9ine and Nicki Minaj, they make the song called Trolls, which is overall graphic. Nothing happens, But this music video, very, very impactful. And I also like the director of this video. His name is Roman Gavris. He's directed a lot of gritty, films throughout his career, such as, speaking of Kanye West, No Church in the Wild, which is what him and Jay-Z did for the Watch the Throne collaboration, and also a video that we're going to talk about in probably a few seconds. But one of the last things I want to mention about Born Free is what do you think was the overall message that they were trying to portray, especially with everything going on with SARS in Nigeria? I want to show this to you guys because I feel like this kind of hits home to what's going on not only in America with the protests and police brutality, but also in Nigeria.
I feel like it showed how we sometimes wrongfully persecute people, and also the extent to the power that government has to wrongfully persecute people. Well, in the video, it didn't necessarily show. Did it show while all the ginger-headed people were locked up or taken? Did it tell a story? Was there a pre?
They basically showed how it was sieged. Like this whole apartment complex was basically sieged by this task force. And then when they bring I think the last redheaded kid on the bus, it's revealed that, oh crap, these guys are basically picking everyone off the street to kill them.
Yeah, I think she did it in a way that wouldn't have polarized people. She just showed a bunch of redheaded people getting like thrown onto a bus and then killed like animals in a field. So based off of how she did that, I really enjoyed that. And I think it was trying to people are wrongfully persecuted for like such trivial reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing, and we'll get to Kristen, is that if you remember the scene where the little boy was about to get shot in the head, that actor said that the reason why they made this video, they wanted to show violence in order to end violence. It was supposed to be like an eye-opening thing for people to see.
Yeah, kind of like Cuties did.
Basically, yeah.
Of young girls to sort of end it, but just like Born Free, people were ready to rip it apart.
Exactly. Kristen?
I think her point kind of got lost in how people trivialized it. But I think she was trying to put it towards something that people don't necessarily discriminate against as much. And I'm only saying that because right now, at least, not as many people are just like, oh my gosh, redheads.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one of them that I'm really glad that you guys like picked this, film apart. And now, well, any final thoughts about MIA's Born Free? All right. So the next video we're going to be talking about is also from Roman Gavras, and it's from this electronic duo, I think, band. Their names are Justice, and they made this short film called Stress. This music video called Stress. Now, this one I think is very interesting because it almost reminded me of, if you guys are familiar with the film A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick, it kind of has that vibe to it where, and Chris, I saw you shaking your head, where it follows a group of these rebels basically, and they basically go through Paris terrorizing everybody. Like you could literally just be sitting down on a park bench and they'll just come up to you and beat you up. You know what I'm saying? And it's pretty interesting because my last episode when we was talking about Bully, and it has that like the household dichotomy is basically dissolving, and as we saw like with Marty, Allie, Lisa, they're like, screw it, let's just kill Bobby. What do you guys think was the overall message that was depicted in this music video? Because this video stars a diverse cast of teenagers. You have some Black kids, a few Hispanic kids, and then a few Caucasian kids. So what do you guys think? How do you guys think that Roman Gavras took this visual and related it to now with the rebellion, rising with movies like Bully and Kids?
Well, in the context of the video, the kids were North African and of African descent from France, and kids came from an impoverished background. The kids they based the music video off of, they live on the outskirts of France, and they're children of immigrant parents, and kind of has a negative. The kids who are those children living on the outskirts of like Paris, not France, I'm sorry, they have like there's this negative stigma around them, saying that because of their impoverished background, they only seek to wreak havoc on France and French citizens. Is kind of like how we relate like crime in certain marginalized communities in America. That's basically what they've done to these kids. And the music video was supposed to urge people to reflect on that, to reflect on their stereotypes of children from North African and African descent living in France.
Yeah,
But because of the violence in it, people kind of like what Kristen said before, people ready to shoot it down before even thinking about it. A lot of these videos were actually thought pieces, a lot of the videos that we're going to talk about today. And you frequently see that people don't necessarily pay attention to the message, but are really ready to just react to it.
yeah. And the main controversy that I think it surrounded this project was the fact that a lot of people, because the majority of the kids were African, as Ashanti was saying, so it was almost like, I would say racism was kind of creeping in, where it was like, oh, we can't trust, these young black kids that, you know, run around Paris, and because these kids, they was beating people up, trying to hit on women, beat up a guy who owned a car, stole his car, and then lit it on fire, and then beat up the documentarian who was basically following them around filming this. So I thought that was really cool. What about you, Kristen?
I think it was just like a hedonistic dream, like people doing whatever they wanted to just because they could.
And I also dug the music that was playing throughout, because the song is called Stress. And the music that plays has this very unnerving feel to it. It feels like you're literally on edge. It almost feels like nails on a chalkboard, basically, you know. And it keeps revving up as these characters progress.
Yeah. And one thing, is this a music video that was featured on Kanye West's website initially, like what
Yeah,
you were talking before? Does
yeah.
he endorse these people, or are they like on his record label, or what did they like collab together to get that done?
Okay. So Kanye West, I think, well, I don't, well, let me think. Well, no, he put this video on his website because this was during a time period when Kanye West was really going into that like experimental era with albums like Yeezus and Life of Pablo. So he gave them basically the cosign, right? So when I heard about that, I was like, huh, that's pretty cool. And then I, jumped over to Vimeo, which is where I actually watched it, and YouTube. And I was thinking to myself, this is like, I could really see a movie based off of this short, because this film, as well as Born Free, these are basically short films, which these videos are. What about, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about maybe what was the main idea that was surrounding this. I like when Kristen said a hedonistic like dream, basically. But if this was released now, do you guys think it would have the same like impact as something like a This Is America, where it kind of started a conversation piece? Or do you think it will still be very controversial and people be like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, that was initially the point when it was first released. I wasn't wording myself very well, but it was supposed to tell the story of children from an impoverished background of immigrants from North Africa and children that are from African descent living in France. So these artists basically were trying to show their story through this music video. So based off of what we just said, I think it would be accepted now with music videos like This Is America. I think it would be accepted. I think people would have a generally good conversation about it, like proper discourse would happen.
And also the fact that this was made, well, in France. In France it's still a hub for those social unrest, because Roman Gavras, what he portrays in a lot of his videos is that social unrest. I remember in the No Church in the Wild music video that it was a full-on riot, full-on protest that they were doing, that Jay-Z and Kanye were basically opened up the decade with what's to come, you know what I'm saying, with these protests and with the riots that's going on. What about you, Kristen?
I actually think it probably wouldn't make as much of an impact now, only because I didn't actually think it got the message through enough. It was just missing something.
Yeah,
So do you
yeah.
think, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Ashanti, do you think this video could have been a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Name the message. I got
Yeah.
you.
Some people who were critiquing the film said, because I'm not, well, none of us are French, and I actually have to read into whose story they were portraying. So when I found that out, I feel like if it had some, like, a message at the end, like giving some statistics about how many of these children are incarcerated per year
Yeah.
in France, helpful, because
Like
there is a stigma of
photograph at it.
North African descent in France.
Yeah. So like a little, like let's say when they lit the car on fire and beat up the documentarian, you think it had like a little statistic saying, how this is how many people, from these impoverished areas like exist or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of remind me of like certain German music videos that I watched that are just chaos the whole way through.
Yeah.
That's literally, I'm sorry, Ashanti. That's literally the main thing that I described about this music video. This is poetic chaos.
Yeah, I think one reason is because most people don't understand the cultural context of it. So if you're living in France and you see these faces, you'd automatically understand that there is a civic problem and a social problem based off the faces that you're seeing. But if people contested the video globally because they're obviously not from France and they don't understand the relations between these groups of people. It's just how in Canada there's a lot of issues with Native or Indigenous people and white Canadians, but most of us don't know that. We think it would just be a black and white issue. So because most people don't live in France, they probably wouldn't understand why the video was so important.
And we can almost relate this to your discussion on Cuties, with how
Oh,
people
yeah.
didn't really understand that film when it came out, and they tore it apart.
Yeah. It's taking things out of this cultural context that gets a lot of these videos in trouble because we don't understand the history.
Okay. Any final thoughts on justice stress? You, Ashanti?
Mm.
Okay. Now the next one is a song and a video that was very popular when it came out. And I actually pretty much like this song. So SIA-Elastic Heart, right? This video stars Shia LaBeouf. We all know of him, from Even Steven, Transforms, all that. And also Maddie Ziegler. I hope I pronounced that right. And this short was a part of a trilogy. So the first video was Chandelier. Second video was Elastic Heart. And then the third video, I believe it was called Big Girls Don't Cry.
Yeah.
And the main controversy surrounding this was the idea of pedophilia, because as we see in the music video, both of them are wearing practically nude clothing, clothing that matches their skin tone. And of course, Shia LaBeouf is a grown man, and Maddie Ziegler, she's around our age. You know what I'm saying? And I also like another thing I like is the minimalist set design, because this video takes place in pretty much a bird cage. What were you all's thoughts when you guys first watched the video? Did you get that sense of, I'm sorry to cut y'all off, did you get that sense of this is sort of an underlying message for pedophilia, or do you think it was deeper than that?
Well, Sia came out multiple times saying that, like you just brought up, the trilogy of videos. Those videos were a psychological statement of what it meant to be the artist Sia. So the reason why the set in that video was so minimalistic is because it's Sia's psyche, and the reason why those people were so bare is because it's the contradicting personas that she has.
Yeah.
And mad because we were like, well, if it's your psyche, why was there a grown man in the video? But it's the simple fact that he was wearing such minimal clothes that was supposed to urge that feeling.
Yeah.
But when I first watched this video, like when I was like in middle school, I kind of like, it was like, why is there a grown man in this video? Why is she so young? Like all that stuff. But once you understand the artist's intentions, which people rarely do, I felt compelled to understand what Sia was trying to say. Maddie Ziegler, that is the younger version of herself, and the older Shia LaBeouf is, well, the older version of Sia, and there's a lot of him trying to hold on to the younger version of herself and not being able to carry it with her.
Yeah.
If you guys understand what I'm saying.
And we'll get to like that part in a few when I tell y'all my thoughts, but Kristen?
But I actually thought that the father or Shia LaBeouf was the father figure in her life because her father was suffering from mental illness and she was as well. So I thought it was about her her being able to get through it, but he wasn't because he just couldn't see a way out.
And the cool thing about this album that came out, that this was the single for, is that this was basically based off of her, I believe, I don't want to say drug addiction, but it was based off of those trials and tribulations that she went through. Now, I like how you guys kind of talked about, like when Kristen said it was the father figure. Shia LaBeouf was basically the father figure. Because when I watched this, the scene where he's holding Maddie and she's like hitting him on the head and he's making those faces, it kind of reminded me of like a playful dad. You know what I'm saying? And then the final scene where she can get out of the cage and he can't. I like when Ashanti said he's basically trapped in his own thoughts. The cage represents the mental, prison that a lot of people are in when they are depressed, when they are dealing with anxiety and stuff like that. I like that you guys brought that up. Now, do I think personally this was aimed towards pedophilia? When I first saw it, like when Ashanti said, when I was in like 8th grade when I saw this too. Originally, I was like, yeah, this is kind of weird. Both of them look dirty as hell. And then why is Shia LaBeouf very grown dancing with a young, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate what Kristen brought up, because that shows that you actually went and researched the artist's personal life and the story behind the music video and the music itself. And I think that's really important when you're looking at these artists' discographies and the things that they create, because it provides humanity to some of the more like possibly graphic things that you're seeing. And that goes into the music video that we just recently talked about. If you don't do research to make the connection, then you won't be able to enjoy art as it really is. It's a reflection of the art. It's not all the time. Sometimes it's meant to be aesthetically pleasing, but I really like what Kristen said. It added humanity to that.
Right. It's a reflection of I feel like this video was a reflection of Sia's reality, the reality that she lived in. You know what I'm saying? And even, aesthetically, like how Maddie was, her hair was very similar to the wig that Sia wears a lot, where it covers her, face and stuff like that. I like those, details. Another thing, and we pretty much already answered this. Well, I've already answered this. What do you guys think that the cage represented? The cage that these two performers are dancing in?
It kind of if we're still relating it to like Sia's psyche or like emotional troubles, I think I agree with what you said. Except in the sense that Sia's past self isn't able to carry the burdens of her older self, which is why Shia LaBeouf, or older Sia, is like trapped in the cage because he can't join her in the past, maybe.
Yeah. Kristen? Or do you kind of agree with what Ashanti was saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and another thing is, and we'll get to the final one. I know this video was pretty quick. Both of these music videos, well, Born Free and Stress, those dealt with violence. That was the main thing that made those two videos controversial, was the depiction of violence. These next two, well, of course, Elastic Heart, and then the next one, those depict senses of like pedophilia to an extent. So, excuse me, before we continue to the final one, any final thoughts on Elastic Heart by Sia?
No.
Okay, so the final video is from famous singer George Michael, right? I like your smile right there. Shanti, you're a big fan. And this video is called I Want Your Sex, right? Now, out of all of the videos that we are talking about, this one actually has a groove to it. You can actually, get on the dance floor and dance to this. You know what I'm saying? I understand why it was pretty controversial because, like, let's be real. If you walk up to somebody and say, I want your sex, it's either two ways. You're going to get beat up or thrown in jail. Well, Shanti, you being the George Michael stan that you are, can you somewhat analyze the meaning of this song?
All right. Firstly, we have to understand the history of George Michael's life. Prior to this being George Michael unanimous, he was a part of the group, the teenage pop sensation Wham from the UK. You guys have probably heard their songs "Wake Me Up" before all that other stuff. And George Michael songwriter. He's been writing since he was like 16 years old, and he felt as though Wham kind of trapped him into like a pop teen sensation. So when he created the Faith album, which is where I Want Your Sex came from, it was supposed to be very adult and masculine in a way, but also George Michael, he never really came out talking about his sexuality, but George Michael was a bisexual man, I'm pretty sure. I can't really define it for you guys because he hasn't told anybody. So it was also, some people say that the Faith album, because it was so sexual and people were kind of wondering like, are you, it was supposed to just like cement the fact that he is a masculine pop star. And also, there's also another layer to it. During that time, the AIDS epidemic was happening, and I Want Your Sex, one of the lines was, sex is natural, sex is cool, and it's best when it's one-on-one, basically to promote monogamy. And the music video had like a lot of layers to it, but overall, like the actual video was just a lot for people to handle.
Yeah, it was a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. You know what I'm saying? Like when I watched, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. This is kind of groove. And then when he actually starts, singing, I'm like, this is kind of weird, but I still groove to it. Yeah. How about you, Kristen?
Mhm.
I actually like the video, but I think I just like music from back then. And I don't quite see why it's controversial. Maybe people didn't quite like the innuendos. But
Yeah.
I mean, the video is called I Want Your Sex. So, I mean, if you clicked on it expecting it not be a little controversial, I don't know what you were thinking.
It's like somebody makes something that says, I support Donald Trump, and they automatically come in and be like, oh my God, what is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, the heck?
I don't know. Yeah, when it first, that's essentially why MTV created the nasty hour, or the hour where like sexually skills could arise, because that video played during a time when children were still up looking at MTV. So if you're someone's mom busting into your child's room and you saw a model like shimmying and charading around George Michael's bareless, topless body, you'd be like, what's going on? Like,
Timmy, what's this? Like,
same with Nick. They created Nick at Night.
And how Cartoon Network with Adult Swim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only channel that didn't do that was Disney Channel.
But Disney was for kids.
Yeah. Where, like, Cartoon Network was more of like they still kind of made mature content to an extent, like Samurai Jack and.
Yeah, because teenagers watched it instead of just little children.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I'm glad that Ashanti, talked about, was the advent of MTV, because a lot of these iconic music videos that were either, controversial or gained a lot of notoriety, for example, Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, that played in heavy rotation, like every day. It was like, okay, I don't give a damn if such and such is coming on, we playing Billie Jean afterwards, and also, music videos such as Jeremy by Pearl Jam, which was extremely graphic. Like I told y'all, the uncensored version is actually on YouTube, where Jeremy actually puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger, as well as the Prodigies, I smack my bits up and that type of stuff. But yeah, MTV was very unique back in the day because it was pretty much the kids and teenagers radio, basically,
Yeah.
in a visual form,
Yeah, and especially with a lot of UK artists like George Michael, everything, it sort of became experimental, and it helps people like kind of like want to be stands for them, or like them. It's the things that they pushed. Like it was all George Michael when he was a part of Wham. It was all very glamour. It was all very sachet. It was all very, I can woo you, I can do this, because they had these clothes on in their music videos and their fancy leather jackets and all that stuff. Allow people to subscribe to their lifestyle through like the video.
And let's be honest here, the main thing that kind of propelled George Michael was he was also pretty handsome. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, pretty cute or whatever.
Now, in the final question, and I know we didn't really talk, I know this video was hella fast, but we got like 9 minutes left. I want to ask you, Ashanti, what was the thing that made you a George Michael fan?
Well, I grew up on like 80s new wave music, like Culture Club and New Order, and like just the Smiths and like all that stuff. But George Michael, I think it's just because his writing, like I read what the fuck do you call, I read the autobiography that his Wham bandmate wrote, and once I read that, it just like cemented me as a George Michael fan, because it's the that he writes. He's a very lyrical person, and he started writing like when he was like 16 or 17, so I really enjoy the lyrics in his music. He just knows how to write a good pop song, really.
Yeah. And
You know,
also,
he produces a lot of this stuff, so I Want Your Sex was like kind of built from the ground up by him, and it
yeah,
sounds good to be a 21-year-old writing it.
yeah, like unlike a lot of pop tunes where someone would just write and they would just send it to you. And also I actually like the song Careless Whispers he did with that saxophone.
He wrote 17.
Love that record. But
He just knows how to build really good layered melodies. And I just like all his music. Like it doesn't even matter. Like I like all of it.
that's good. So y'all, any final thoughts on George Michael's I Want Your Sex? All right, y'all. That's it. Thank y'all for watching those videos. And thank you guys for watching the 1025 podcast. I'm Jordan along with Ashanti and Kristen. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you. Bye.